Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Desert Island Nerds, coming here from lockdown London, and it's a cyberpunk kind of night tonight. I'm wearing my cyberpunk t-shirt in honor of our next guest, and we're just waiting. Well, we've got a few people on the stream. Hi everybody. As usual, this is a very interactive show, so if you're watching on Twitch TV, you can talk to us and interact. We will be having... We've got 4 giveaways tonight, 4 giveaways, which are only available to followers on our Twitch channel. So if you're not watching this on Facebook or YouTube right now, go to the Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/Rodney418. That's me. If you go to the Twitch channel and hit the follow button, you will be eligible for the giveaways. If you're a subscriber, you get an extra ticket for the giveaways. So if you've got a Twitch Prime subscription, click on that subscription button and you'll get more chance of winning. And there's some pretty fun prizes tonight. So for those who are watching in the future, we are, I was going to say this is the middle of lockdown 2020, but it may not be the middle at all. But let's see what happens. So let's start with running a little bit of video to go with our next guest. Let's check it out. All right, and that was, of course, Billy Idol, Shock to the System from his album Cyberpunk. And we are with Mr. All Things Cyberpunk and Beyond Cyberpunk tonight, the Plague Doctor himself, Mr. Gareth Brawyn. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Rodney, how you doing? Yes, I'm Skyping in from my pandemic bunker in Arlington, Virginia.
That's definitely, I love that mask. I love that mask.
I know, isn't it amazing? This is like a $10, like Halloween store mask. It's really well made, and yeah, I love it. You know, I just recently found out, I didn't really even know until right after I got this mask. I'm going to be a plague doctor for Halloween a couple of years ago, that these were actually respirators, that they were actually designed to have straw and different kind of herbs and things inside of them, and they had loose lacing or holes along the sides. And basically, plague doctors are wearing a hazmat suit. I mean, they have the wax jacket and the big boots and the big gloves. They had a cane for social distancing. They could push people away from them or direct where they wanted people to go. So it's really kind of an amazing invention. I mean, I'm sure it didn't do anything to protect them against the plague, but it was it's pretty ingenious. And they just look so damn cool.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the suits look so freaking cool, but they were genuinely, they were PPE, medieval PPE.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, speaking of which, I think I'm going to take this off, this nonsense off.
Oh my God! Oh. Put it back on!
The glowing chrome.
Welcome, Gareth. Okay, so for those of you who do not know who Gareth Brawyn is, and he is a chronicler of all things techie, cyberpunky, science fictiony, nerdy for decades.
Don't rub that part in.
Hi, I'm wearing a T-shirt that I made in 1990. So
yeah, exactly.
This T-shirt is 30 years old, and it still actually fits.
That record in 1990.
What goes around comes around, right? 30 years later, here we are.
Exactly. Living in the dystopian hell that we were talking about in 1990. Yep.
Yeah, it's a science fiction wonderland out there, or at least so I'm told. I haven't been out there to see it. But hey, you know, we nerds. I mean, it's really funny because I was looking at all those like apocalypse preppers guys out, you know, with their assault rifles in Michigan or whatever, like, you know, they've been spending decades getting ready in bunkers for the apocalypse, and the apocalypse comes, and all they've got is like, oh my God, I need a haircut. They're bringing out their guns to get a haircut.
Yeah, my roots are growing out.
I mean, You know, and us nerds, we're the ones who are really prepared for the apocalypse. We've spent our entire lives getting used to, you know, like the internet and technology and living alone.
Oh yeah, no, my son who lives in California, who's a game designer, he and I have been laughing about that. We say, yeah, we've been prepping for this our whole lives. We completely know how to just stay indoors, do everything online. We were
Exactly.
made for this. We nerds were made for this.
Yeah. So, so okay. So when did it all? Where and when did it start? I mean, where are you from originally? You're in Virginia now.
Yeah, and that's where I grew up. I grew
All
up
right.
in Chester, Virginia, which is a little sleepy Southern Baptist town outside of Richmond, Virginia, which was a big tobacco capital.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I was there, it was sort of like moving away from that. They didn't grow tobacco anymore, but a lot of the big tobacco companies were still there. The tobacco lobby was there. And we were conveniently located next door to Hopewell, Virginia, which was the chemical capital of the South. And when the wind would blow in our direction, the whole town would just smell like a big giant fart. So that's where I
Okay.
grew up. That's my illustrious beginnings. Um, but yeah, so and I have a kind of spinal arthritis that I got at a young age, called ankylosing spondylitis, and so basically I spent my time in prepping for the pandemic, staying inside, reading science fiction. And reading a lot of high technology. I thought I was going to be, I really wanted to be an aerospace engineer when I was a kid. So even as a young teen, I was bringing home aerospace engineering manuals from the local library, and you know, got very into space and you know the moon landings and stuff. I am
Mm-hmm.
old enough to have been there for that.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember persuading my parents to let me stay up late at night so I could watch the moon landings. That's how old
that's
I am.
exactly
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, and then I became very interested. I started being interested. Well, the Whole Earth catalog was really my gateway to everything.
All right.
And yeah, and it's a really interesting story because at around 15 or 16 or whatever, I really wanted to know what it was like to be high, to smoke marijuana and to get high. But I couldn't find anybody to give me weed because they thought I was too young. So eventually I managed to convince a high schooler to sell me a nickel bag of weed, you know, $5 worth, which is like a little finger full of weed. And I went to a friend's house so that we could roll it up and smoke it. But of course, we had no rolling papers. He rummaged through his college brother's room, who was away at college. He found rolling papers, and he came back with something to clean the weed on, which was the Whole Earth catalog. So I put the Whole Earth catalog in my lap, and I start, you know, working to clean the weed, and it's like Buckminster Fuller. Like, wait, well, these dome things look cool, and then you know, so I ended up turning the pages of that thing and become way more interested suddenly in the Whole Earth catalog than the weed. And we ended up smoking the joint. We didn't get high, but I ended up trading him the $5 of weed for the Whole Earth catalog, which was a big $5 and Cooper Black on the cover of the night. I think it was the 1973 Whole Earth catalog.
My God.
And so I brought that home, and then that pretty much was my gateway to everything. I got interested in things like Buckminster Fuller. I've had a lifelong obsession with William Blake. That's the first time I ever encountered William Blake was in the pages of the Whole Earth catalog. Uh, um, Gregory Bateson, which got me into cybernetics and systems theory and all that kind of stuff. But the main thing that really struck me was communes. They had a whole commune section, and I decided I really wanted to go live in a commune. And so I obsessed over this. And so to the point where my parents actually allowed me to graduate high school a year early and go to the commune, because I think they sort of hedged their bet. Like they thought that if they let me go, because I was a smart kid, I was able to get out of skip a year of school because my grades were good enough. So I think they thought, well, smart people go to college. He'll go to this commune. He'll realize not what he wants, and then he'll leave and go to college because that's what smart people do. And I was there for 6.5 years. and got, really into the whole, growing our own food and alternative energy. And I worked in the print shop and worked in the publications we were putting out, and that's how I got into writing. And so I did graphic design, writing, and printing. I had studied printing in high school. And so that's pretty much been the basis of my life from there. I've continued to, the whole idea of DIY technology, DIY media, DIY culture. And that's pretty much what I've done from there. And then I moved up to the DC area, Arlington, where I am now, to live with Patch Adams, the guy they made the movie about.
Oh, right, yes.
Robin Williams. And because he was my doctor, basically, or for my arthritis, I had gone to him, basically suicidal. I just thought, like, this is good. This disease is going to destroy my life, and I don't want to live anymore. And he really turned my life around. And so I wanted to repay him by sort of giving him my skills for a while in publishing and grant writing and all that kind of stuff. So I moved up here to this area with my then wife, and I've pretty much lived here ever since. Was with Patch for 10 years.
Wow, 10 years.
Yep. Yeah, I told him when I moved up here I was going to give him 2 years of my labor in exchange for what I thought he had done for me, and just to help the organization get off the ground. And I ended up being there for 10 years. Right at the point that the movie was being made is when I left.
Oh, wow. So are you a character in the movie?
I actually was a character in the movie. In the original script, which I still have, so I can verify this, there was a character based on me, which was, when I first met Patch, I wrote up the encounter, which appeared in a book that he published called Good Health is a Laughing Matter. And that's the book that the movie's based on. So they had a character based on me, but it, sort of ended up on the cutting room floor during rewrites, those sort of art by committee rewrites.
That's movies for you.
Yep. So, but yes, there was Gary. I love that they turned Gareth into Gary. Did you see the movie, Patch Adams?
I have never seen the movie, weirdly enough. I mean, I heard
it's dreadful. It's
really I heard.
dreadful.
Yeah, it didn't
it's like
get
Hallmark. It's like a Hallmark greeting card version of Patch and his organization called Gesundheit Institute. It's sort of like the Hallmark version of that. So it was pretty sad, but it did get a lot of money, a lot of attention. It allowed him to sort of travel the world and sort of preach his community-based, putting more passion into medicine, caregivers, being more passionate about what they do and trying to fight burnout and stuff. And so, yeah, he's done a lot of good work. He continues to travel around the world and has pretty much since the movie came out.
Wow. Well, yeah, it worked. I mean, it worked.
And so how I got into technology is that while I was the assistant director of Gesundheit Institute, I was responsible for things like the mailing lists and stuff. And I was still an avid Whole Earth person, so I subscribed to Whole Earth Review. And then they spun off a magazine called Whole Earth Software Review. I knew nothing about computers, but just because they did it, I wanted it. I wanted to subscribe to this magazine. And so as soon as I started looking through it, I thought, oh, God, I want one of these computers, man. I don't, this is so cool. And then I think it was Stuart Brand wrote an article about an outlining technology, like a brainstorming software. And I just thought, like, oh, my God, this will so amplify my ideas and stuff. I totally need this thing. So that was my original impulse. And so I convinced Patch to let us buy one to put the mailing lists on it. But it really was just an excuse because I wanted that brainstorming software, which I ended up never buying, never happened. But from there, I got very deeply into computers. And because of that, I got asked to be the computer sciences editor of the Futurist magazine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I was that for like 6 years. And so that became the beginnings of my whole sort of exploring, technology, computers, the internet.
Gotcha. Wow. Amazing. So, what was the first sort of real writing you did? Was that Gaga?
No, well, started writing at the Commune for the Commune publications. I did a column, like a resources column, and then we would track other communities around the world, which was really great. So I got to work on that and then write up some of those community descriptions, and we'd put out a directory. But it really was when I moved up to this area and started writing for the Futurist. But then I joined the Well, the bulletin board system.
Wow, the Well, yes.
Which also, again, it all comes through the Whole Earth catalog. That's where the Whole Earth, the Well was located in the closet in the Whole Earth offices in Sausalito, California.
Right.
Is
that where the name Well came from? WE, Whole Earth?
Well, it's so awful. It's Whole Earth Electronic Link Up.
Oh dear.
In other words, just Well. We don't say the.
Yeah.
We don't unpack the initialism. But everyone was there. It was just like the most amazing place to. I mean, I joined in like 1986, I think, or something like that. But around the 90s is when everyone started to log on, and so it was the early Wired folks, the Mark Frauenfelder of Boing Boing, just tons of people, writers, artists, scientists, educators, the sort of Bay Area hippie culture, Bay Area bohemian, other weird Bay Area stuff.
I was living in Germany at the time, and I heard about the Well. I can't even remember how I heard about the Well. So I hacked into the local university mainframe. I had a little Atari ST I was doing music on with a VT52 emulator, and I hacked the local university mainframe because you couldn't get on the internet back then. You just couldn't get on the internet. So I hacked the local university to use Telnet, so I could Telnet into the Well in San Francisco and actually be part of this thing. And it was that difficult. I literally had to go through this. I had to go dumpster diving at the back of the university to find the thrown away Unix. They threw away the Unix manual of the mainframe, which I then retrieved, a giant box of it, and learned how to use Unix in order to get VT52 into that mainframe to then Telnet into the Well, so I could talk to people like you. That's what it was like getting on the internet back then, boys and girls.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. Yep.
But everybody, the Well was like just the breeding ground of cyberculture, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it really was astonishing. A couple of things really stand out for me is the night that Stuart Brand got back from NASA Ames, where he had tried out their VR rig, which was a display and then I think a early VPL data glove. Right. And he was just completely flipped out over. And I think it was called the topic he started was VR sticking your head in it, I think was the title. And everyone, just went nuts over the potential of this and how this is really going to bring cyberspace to life and all that kind of stuff. And we see how VR has worked out over time.
My Oculus Rift is right up there.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think my first VR thing was I actually saw a U.S. military VR demonstration that ran on a Commodore Amiga. And it was actually surprisingly brilliant because they were experimenting with VR for training troops because it's a lot cheaper than, training in a tank simulator is a lot cheaper than training in a tank.
Right, exactly.
And if you crash it doesn't matter. And so they had done a lot of VR way back in the day, and then it just kind of vanished until relatively recently again. So.
Yeah, and then the other discussion that really sticks out for me is it was actually a discussion that was happening on Usenet, but it got sort of echoed, somebody started the same exact conversation on the Well. It wasn't a mirror or whatever. It was a different discussion on what to call the internet, because there was no name for it yet. And
my God!
Not that anybody
people watching this must be thinking, "Good God, these guys are ancient." Discussing what to call the internet.
Yeah, so I remember, and not that they had any control over it, but it was just a discussion about what people would like it to be called.
Right.
And the three contenders were WorldNet, the Internet, or the Matrix. Those were the three.
Seriously, the Matrix was actually one of them.
What?
Amazing.
Yeah, and I love if we had ended up calling it the Matrix. That would have been so great.
Remarkable. It's remarkable. So was that how you ended up getting involved with Boing Boing? Through the well?
Well, actually, kind of. I mean, Mark and I really solidified our friendship. Mark Fraunfelder, the founder of Boing Boing, and Carla Sinclair, his wife. We solidified our friendship through the well, but we actually met through our zines. I was putting out this zine called Going Gaga, sort of an art, tech, and culture zine.
Right.
And Mark was putting out Boing Boing. He and Carla were swiping copy time on his engineering company that he worked for. At night when people would go home, they would print out copies of Boing Boing on the company Xerox machine. And we both sent them to Fact Sheet 5, which was this amazing, if people don't know what Fact Sheet 5 is, you really missed out. It was this amazing directory of alternative culture, that this thick thing that would come once, I think, maybe it was bi-monthly. So 6 times a year, you get this really thick book which was a directory of zines and music and mixtapes and just all kinds of comic books, self-published comic books, and all kinds of really amazing stuff. And so I would go through and just circle anything that I was interested in. Then I'd sit there with a pile of paper and stamps and some money and send off. And then sometimes I would exchange with folks. So I see this zine listed called Boing Boing. Mine is called Going Gaga. So I immediately saw this affinity in the name and read it. And it's like, oh, he's into cyberpunk and Robert Anton Wilson and, and punk rock. This looks good. And so we exchanged zines. And then that's how we initially became friends. And then once we got on the well together, then it really, because then you could just talk every day. You weren't, corresponding once a month or whatever. You were talking to each other every day.
Yeah, which today is obvious, but back then, I mean, that's the thing, before we had things like the well and Usenet, you literally were talking to people once a month because you couldn't afford to call them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and then I started writing for Boing Boing, and then I closed down my zine and just kept on with Boing Boing, and then we did the Happy Mutant Handbook, which was a book that all of us put together, the editors of Boing Boing.
I've got a screenshot of Gaga Dada on the screen right now for people to see. Oblique strategies for cultural refreshment. And I mean, it looks lovely, but I mean, wow, looking at old zines like this, I have to say the quality is so much better than most of the zines around at that time. And Boing Boing. Okay, I've got this here. In case people are wondering what Telnet was, this was Telnet. This was how you got into Boing Boing.
Yeah,
Boing Boing's bulletin board.
Me telnetting into the Boing Boing conference on the well.
Yeah, look at those high-res graphics.
Yeah,
unbelievable. Mutating simian brain since 1988, but this was 1991. This Telnet session.
Yeah, that's the 1988 or whatever. That's when Mark and Carla started the print Boing Boing. So they're just saying Boing Boing was started then.
Right.
But yeah, that was like probably around 1991, I think.
Wow. I love the bit at the bottom. ANSI modem waiting 40 seconds for connect. 40 seconds. And you tell kids that these days, they won't believe you.
Exactly.
Yeah. 3 new response topics. That Boing Boing logo is just so great. Mutating simian brain since waiting 40 seconds for connect.
And I still remember when Mark did that little ASCII art and thinking like, whoa, this looks so cool.
Yeah, it did.
That was our idea of graphics when it's text-based.
Actually, I think it still looks really cool. I mean, God, I would might use something like that on the cover of my next album. It's so retro. It's brilliant. I love it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we read things back then, boys and girls.
Yep.
Yeah. So okay, so then it was what it was. Hang on. What am I doing here? Oh, there we go. Sorry, just looking at some of the. I've got so many windows going in the background. Thank you for all the people who are following us. By the way, I really appreciate your follows. Actually, should we do a giveaway?
Yeah.
Let's do a giveaway. So we've got some books of yours to give away, right?
Yeah, I wanted to. I have these little chapbooks that I put out in like 2012, called "Tears in the Rain," which it's excerpts from a book that I kickstarted in 2012, 2013, I think actually, called "Borg Like Me," which is I call it a lazy person's memoir because it's basically just a best of collection. But then I wrote introductions that sort of created a timeline for everything. And so this is 3 essays from that, and lovely artwork by John Bergen, my friend John Bergen, who's I've done a lot of projects with over the years, who's in a band called Trust Obey, if folks are familiar with that. Oh, and he has a new album out with Jarbo. They have a project called Blackmouth, just him and Jarbo from Swans. People might know Jarbo from Swans, but yeah, but John is a brilliant artist and a musician. So yeah, so I have 2 copies of this to give away.
Okay, so if you want to enter to get, I've just started the raffle for the first copy of this. If you want to enter, you need to be a follower on our Twitch channel. If you're a follower on the Twitch channel, type in !raffle. You'll see on the oh, there we go. And people are starting to put a raffle in. Yep. You get 1 ticket if you're a follower. If you're a subscriber, you get 2 tickets, 2 chances to win. Callum's got 2 tickets. People are entering. So you've got like 10 minutes. Just type in !raffle. And then at the end, we will see who wins. All right. Well, I'll keep that running in the background while we're talking. Well, maybe we should do some Desert Island nerdy stuff. Let's use the D20 of Destiny. So for those of you who haven't watched before, what we do here in Desert Island Nerds, we've got a list of 20 questions, and each one of these questions is a category of nerd thing. And the idea is that if you were stuck on a desert island and you could only have one thing from each of these categories, what would that one thing be? So we roll the ultimate nerd symbol, the D20, and pick a category. Let's see what we get. And it is 3. Non-fiction book. Okay, you're allowed 1 non-fiction book.
Okay, one thing about that I wanted to say up front with any kind of desert island lists like this, I always think it has to be something with tons of information in it. If this is the only thing that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, it needs to, like, every time I read it, I need to be able to get something good out of it, new things out of it. So the first thing that came to mind for me was Godel, Escher, and Bach.
Oh, right. That's a big book.
It's a big book, and it's filled with, logic puzzles and recursions and all kinds of really interesting things. Actually, going back to Going Gaga, it inspired one of the issues of Going Gaga. I did an issue called Self-Destructing Manifestos, and a lot of those were these little recursive sentences and things that destroy themselves. And it was all based on I think it's a Andre Breton quote of the ultimate goal of Dada is the destruction of Dada itself. So Godel, Escher, and Bach is basically filled with those sorts of like logic puzzles, and so you could just, and it's a jam between music, math, and art. And so, you can't go wrong with that. It's huge. You could really spend the rest of your life exhausting that book. So, that would be my pick.
Yeah, God, I read that book like a long time ago. I mean, back in the day, every pseudo-intellectual university student used to have a copy of that on their bookshelf. Nobody ever got more than a quarter of the way through it, but everybody who thought they were an intellectual had to have that book. But you actually read it, so
to be a bona fide deep nerd, you really needed to Well, I didn't read it like cover to cover. I still get it down sometimes and just
Mm.
read a thing, and it's brilliant every time I open it up. There's something super brilliant that I encounter in there. So, and when I think about that book, that book basically is the glass bead game.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the Magister Ludi, the Hermann Hesse
Herman Hesse,
book,
yeah.
which I read when I was like 17. And I actually, when I read that book, I had sort of this epiphany, like halfway that where reading it, where I thought, this is like my destiny. I am going to bring the glass bead game into reality. This I'm going to devote the rest of my life to. Which in some ways I sort of have in different things that I've done. I'm heavily into gaming. I've done game education. I've written about gaming, and always with the idea of applying games outside of just recreation. But that book is like the most perfect rendering of the concept of the glass bead game, where you have all these different intellectual disciplines that are sort of interweaving with each other. The subtitle is "The Search for the Eternal Golden Braid."
Right.
And so, yeah, I just think that's such a brilliant concept.
Yep. Herman Hesse, for those of you who haven't read it. Pretty interesting stuff. So you've still got a couple more minutes to enter. If you haven't entered already, on the Twitch channel, put in !raffle to win a copy of Gareth's little chapbook. And then we'll be somewhere later on. So you've got plenty of options to win. Had Jones has got a ticket. Matthias Garner's got a ticket. Hi, guys. Nice to see you on the stream. All right. Keep on going. Well, then that should close in a couple of minutes. So, where were we? Let's go to. Oh, Gratz has got a ticket. Hi, man. Thanks for being with us. Remember, you need to be just need to be a follower on the Twitch channel to enter. And if you're a subscriber, you get 2 chances. All right. So let's see what else we got. Let's go to Beyond Cyberpunk, since we're on a Cyberpunk kick tonight.
Yep.
How did that happen? What was that all about?
So that really also was very much an outgrowth of the Well, that us just hanging out on the Well in the Cyberpunk conference and so forth. And then Hypercard came out, which for folks that don't know, Hypercard was this like a visual hypermedia interactive database program on the Mac that had a scripting language that was super easy to create visual databases and cool little media artifacts and stuff. And so my friend Peter Sugarman got really enamored with Hypercard right away. He was very much into computer education tools. So he saw this as a brilliant, potentially brilliant computer education tool. So we started mucking around with like, what could we do with this? Like what something fun that we could do with this. And so somebody had posted on the Well an exhaustive list of every cyberpunk or cyberpunk adjacent book. And so I said, oh, well, here it is. Let's just make a card for each one of these books, and then we'll just start going through it at our leisure time. If we've read them, we'll write a review, and then we'll reach out to our friends. We'll send them the list, like Mark Frauenfelder, and have them contribute. And then when we have the whole thing gathered up, we'll just put it up on the Well, and people can have this sort of compendium of cyberpunk reviews.
Right.
But then very quick. So it was literally that casual, like just a sort of fun vanity project. But we turned Mark Frauenfelder onto it, and he, I think, sort of mistook it. He thought like it was like a commercial thing that we were going to do. He took it seriously, I should say, way more seriously than we did. And so then we thought like, oh crap, I guess we have to. He started writing reviews and sending us stuff. And so that sort of sobered us up into the idea that, oh, maybe we should like do this for real and make this into a commercial product. And then we started reaching out to people like Are You Serious from Mondo 2000 and Robert Anton Wilson and Steve Jackson from Steve Jackson Games. And, back then it was really an amazing thing to Bruce Sterling. Like back then, the idea of like approaching a famous writer where you just write to them and say like, hey, you want to contribute to this project? You just could, because it was so easy to do, and you wouldn't expect that they would actually say yes, but many of these people did, and and contributed essays and stuff, and so it sort of mushroomed into this. And I say mushroomed. I mean, this was at the time this was considered a behemoth at 5.5 megabytes. It it came on 5 self-extracting archive documents, and it opened up, expanded to 5.5 megabytes on your desktop. But yeah, that was considered, enormous.
It was. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember extracting it on my first Mac. It was one of the first things I did when I got a Macintosh. Was because Hypercard was freaking awesome. I've got a screenshot up here. Look at those graphics for the time. Unbelievable. And Hypercard in a way was kind of like proto World Wide Web. It was hyperlinks.
It really was. Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in that idea that it basically because one of the early definitions that Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who created the World Wide Web, the definition was of the web was a universe of hyper-connected multimedia documents, or I might have that slightly off, but that's what Beyond Cyberpunk was, but just on your desktop.
Right.
There was hyperlinks, there were essays, there were pop-up graphics, there were animations, there were sounds, all interwoven, and we called it a do-it-yourself guide to the future because the idea was we didn't want to tell you. I mean, there are like some cyberpunk manifestos in there, quote unquote, but we really wanted to just put a bunch of stuff from this particular domain together, hyperlink interesting connections, and then let the person sort of make their own, idea of what the future is going to be, this early emerging cyber culture. And this was also right around when the hacker crackdown happened, when the
Steve Jackson
FBI
games.
and the CIA, and then that's when GURP Cyberpunk, the Steve Jackson games, got raided because they thought this role-playing game manual was a manual for computer hacking.
Right.
So this was all happening at the same time.
Yeah, I was actually writing for Steve Jackson games, and that was my first actual job. Was writing for Steve Jackson games. Yeah. In fact, I've still got like right up there's an old Car Wars, the original Car Wars box from Steve Jackson games.
I so loved Car Wars. It was
I loved that.
The gnarliest game, but I loved it anyway.
Yeah, there we go. That's the original first edition Car Wars Truck Stop. Look at that box. Insane. Look at that box. I can't believe it.
Yeah, those pocket box. I still have those in the attic. All of those.
Well, look, it's still got all the counters inside. My God. Yep. So that was my first writing job, writing for Car Wars. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I've kept in touch with. I haven't talked to Steve in a while, but a couple of years ago we exchanged messages when I started writing about gaming stuff again, and I reached out to him to get free Steve Jackson games booty.
Still making amazing games. I mean, the guy's an incredibly great game designer. Just amazing game designer. Designer
edition that they did of Ogre. I have that. That is absolutely insane. That I literally cannot pick up the box. It's so heavy, and because of my spinal arthritis, I literally can't. So yeah, what happened is when they came out with the smaller edition, I just used that. I haven't touched the designer edition.
Yeah, the original Ogre came out in a box like this. Came out in one of these. Yeah, like all the games did. They just hung them up in the store. The original Ogre came out in a box like this, and then the revised version came out in a box that you literally needed a truck to take it. You needed a trolley to carry it around in.
Which I thought was such a brilliant sort of inside joke, and the idea that an Ogre is supposed to be this behemoth cybernetic tank. So the game was basically a behemoth cybernetic tank, this designer edition.
Yeah.
But the first one, the first ones even came in like a Ziploc bag. They weren't even in the pocket.
I've still got those in the shelf somewhere. All right, so let's see who won the book. Let's pick a winner. Who's Kalen 666? You are the winner. Well done, Kalen. I'll contact you after the show, and we'll get your address over to Gareth, and you can get a copy of the book. And there will be another copy. We have 2 copies, so we'll run another. Hitting my own microphone. We'll run another one in just a little while later. But we have some more stuff in between then. So, all right. Well, on the subject of games, then one thing. This is the 4th episode of Desert Island Nerds, and the one thing that every single person has got in common is role-playing games. I mean, like every single person I said, so what really got you into this? Brian Freisinger was like, no, D&D. Talk to Anthony. If you haven't seen the Brian Freisinger episode, amazing stuff. The guy did some incredible graphic work. And then Anthony Johnson, who did Atomic Blonde, he was like, "Oh yeah, D&D, Warhammer." And then last week we had Christina Z, and she was like, "Oh, Call of Cthulhu." So what was your role playing game introduction then? It has to be one.
Oh yeah, no, I have a very bizarre RPG introduction because when I lived at this commune, Twin Oaks, we would go around. As I said, I did that thing for Communities Magazine where we kept track of the groups and worked on this directory. So I went to this commune in the Ozark Mountains, and they had this unbelievable setup where they had just built a new kitchen dining building, and they had a lounge. And in the center of the lounge, and my memory might be exaggerating it because it was so wondrous to me, especially after I got really into D&D and realizing how cool their setup was. But I think it was like an octagonal table with they sell these tables now with the little places to keep your books and roll your dice and stuff. But it was set up like that. It had a sort of a well in the inside of it. You could set up little, maps and miniature. They had all of the D&D books at the time, which was, the AD&D. So I think it was like 79. So it was the original AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual and all of the adventures that were out at that time. And then they had another shelf of different kind of, the Avalon Hill war games and stuff. But we're talking Ozark Mountains, real hippies, super, long hair, beards, into Tolkien and the whole sort of, living on the land and eating the magic mushrooms that would grow out of the cow patties in their fields. And so they would sit around at night, and I'd never played. I just would watch them play D&D and, get baked on weed, drinking homemade elderberry wine, and playing D&D. So I thought it was like a total hippie thing. Like I had no association that it was a nerd thing at all, but I just thought, this is so cool. Like I want to take this back to Twin Oaks. So I went back to Twin Oaks, and then we started a D&D group, and we made the miniatures out of clay because we couldn't actually afford miniatures. So we made our own little miniatures.
Wow.
And but then it was only after when I left Twin Oaks and moved up to this area that I started realizing, like, oh, this is totally a nerd thing, not a. I mean, there's tons of crossover between nerds and freaks, but It was just such a funny thing because I had a completely different perception of what a role playing gamer was, right? Because of that experience. But I've just never let go. I got really heavily into Dungeons and Dragons, and then from there into things like space opera and Call of Cthulhu and Paranoia. And like if I had to choose a desert island game.
You do have to.
What's that?
You do have to.
Well, then it might actually be Paranoia.
Really? Yeah, that's what Christina had said last week.
Yeah, because I for a while there I thought Greg Costicon, the guy who designed it, was just I thought he was a god. He is a god. I got everything that he did. Do you remember a game called Web and Starship, The Earth Between Two Foes?
Do you remember The Price of Freedom?
What's that?
The Price of Freedom. Do you remember that game?
No.
Okay, that's the Greg Costicchio game you never got. It was one of the most brilliantly absurd role-playing games ever. It was like, Red Dawn and all these 70s movies where America gets invaded by the Soviets. That was the premise. It was America gets invaded by the Soviets and all the players are in the American resistance. And I used to play. Me and my group were playing it forever. We loved it, but we just took it to the most ridiculous, Americana, extremes. Right. So like my character was a was an ex-Vietnam vet who was getting PTSD, and my girlfriend's character was like a country and western, Dolly Parton style country and western singer, and one of the other players was a hellfire and damnation Baptist preacher, and it was just like we just went for every American cliche, and like, you know, doing stirring speeches about patriotism in the American way. It was fabulous. Fabulous game.
Web and Starship, I could never get anybody else to play with me because the rules were so complicated. It took so long to set up that I had a couple of friends over, and by the time the thing was set up and I had taught them the rules, it was time to go. So I still have it upstairs, never been played.
Old school. Well, there is a tabletop simulator. There was a couple of different tabletop game simulators on the web, and lots of them have. There's a game, oh God, I can't remember the name of it now. There's an application that has like literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different board games. And I believe Web and Starship is one of them.
Oh,
so you may find somebody else somewhere in the world who actually wants to play it.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, well, so maybe I'll finally get to play after all these years.
But you were a Warhammer aficionado as well.
Yeah, no, Warhammer's been the one that Warhammer 40K. I never played the fantasy.
Right, 40K.
Version, but yeah, I got heavily into Warhammer 40K for, you know, decades. And I still, like, now I'm playing, well, I haven't played yet, but I've painted up the two armies to do Necromunda, the new version of Necromunda, which is pretty great.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah, no, and I loved it back in the day, and I'm thrilled with the new miniatures. I think are astonishing. So,
yeah, because I keep seeing when I'm following you on Facebook, I keep seeing you like with painting figures and stuff. So,
yep, exactly.
I mean, I am the world's worst figure painter. I never do that. I've got to find somebody who'll do it for me.
I used to be terrible. I just decided to stick with it until I got decent.
So that brings us to the next giveaway. It's a CD, right? A Warhammer CD of some type.
Yeah.
Tell us about this.
Yeah. So it's called Music for Hammering. It's a CD. My friend John Bergen, again, the same guy who did the cover of Tears in the Rain. He used to be the webmaster of a 40K website that I did called conversions.com with a K. It's like a modeling and conversion site, and we just thought it'd be fun to take some of his existing music and make it into a CD. And so here it is. There's only 3. I found this in my closet the other day when I was cleaning up. There's only 3 copies of this left in the world.
Whoa.
Giving away one of them.
Are you sure you want to give it away?
Yes, fine.
All righty, here we go. Yeah, let's start that up. Is it start up? There we go. Yeah, the raffle is started. So this is your second raffle, folks. Yeah, same as before. Just type in !raffle if you want to enter for the Music for Hammering. And I've actually heard this. It's really, really good. I love that CD. I really genuinely like it. And here we go. Matthias Garnitz has entered. Yeah, I mean, it's really atmospheric and beautiful stuff. I was really impressed by it. And you actually did something for Dan Abnett, who writes for Warhammer 40K?
Dan Abnett was became a fan of that CD and dedicated, just to our surprise, dedicated his book Straight Silver to me and John. He said something like, "Thank you for hammering while I was writing," or something, I don't know, something like that. But we were just gobsmacked by it. And then he asked us to do the soundtrack for the deluxe edition of the follow-up book. It's from his Gaunt's Ghost series. The
classic 40K series is Gaunt's Ghost.
Yeah, a lot of those I've read so many of those 40K books, and those are really guilty pleasures because they're really terrible. but his
it's a nerd version of Mills and Boon novels, really, isn't it? You know,
exactly.
But Dan Abnett can really write. I mean, also writer of Guardians of the Galaxy from Marvel as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean,
he's done all kinds of comic book writing, and he's a really lovely guy, and it was so honored to work with him on that project. So we did the soundtrack, which came in the really beautiful deluxe Black Library book for the book Trader General, which is an amazing novel, especially if you're familiar with the series. But
All right.
So yeah, that's how that came from.
So enter for that, folks. Exclamation mark raffle. See if we get a few entries already. If you're not already a follower on the Twitch channel, you should be if you want to get the CD, and it really does sound good. All right. Well, let's move along a little bit more then. Let's go back to the Cyberpunk thing. So I played Billy Idol at the beginning, and I'm sure people are wondering why are you playing Billy Idol.
I was like, hey, wait, that dude's not Billy Idol.
Well, I don't know. You can see the resemblance a little bit. So how did the Billy Idol connection come about?
That came about through Beyond Cyberpunk. I got a call one day, he actually called to order Beyond Cyberpunk. I just was doing all the order fulfillment out of my home. We put my phone number in the ads in Mondo and Boing Boing and places. And so this guy called William Broad, he gave me his credit card information. And at the end of the call, he said, and what's your name? And I said, Gareth Branwyn. And then he hung up. But then he realized, wait, Gareth Branwyn, he's the guy who wrote that thing in Mondo 2000, this thing that he called the Cyberpunk Manifesto. I never called it that. It was just called, Is There a Cyberpunk Movement? And but he really liked it, and so he called back later that afternoon, and he said, "Yeah, I want to do this. I wish I could do a great Billy Idol accent, but I absolutely cannot."
Yeah, all right, mate. You okay? Yeah.
But he said, I really want to do this like the opening to Moody Blues, Nights in White Satin, the breathe deep, the gathering gloom, watch lights fade in every room, that one.
Yeah, right.
So he starts reading my words back to me. Billy fucking Idol is on the phone reading something that I wrote in that kind of breathe deep, the gathering gloom delivery. And I just thought, like, okay, this is just too surreal. But yeah, he ended up using parts of this thing called "Is There a Cyberpunk Movement" as the opening track of the album. Of course, by the time the album came out, he had added things to it, which was part of the contract. He had the right to this. He added things which are just I would never say, like we've all become slave bots and things that I just were. I wouldn't say that.
No,
I might say
hope
that
not.
now. He might have just been ahead of the curve. Yeah, so when it came out, he had done like heavily processed it and put the vocal way in the back. You really can't hear.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I listened to it the other day when I was doing research, and I was really, it was really hard to hear because they processed it so much and so badly.
Yeah, badly. Yeah, it's really badly done. I was really sort of shocked by it when I got it. But the best thing is when you look at the comments of it on YouTube, people are trying to guess the lyrics because they can't hear it. And some of the guesses are just absolutely hysterical. So that was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it must have. I mean, I did a Cyberpunk album before Billy Idol, by the way, just to get that out there, folks. And when the Billy Idol album, I mean, and it was interesting because there's all sorts of like Billy Idol and I have moved in around each other for years. We've never actually met, but there's lots of cross currents going on because when he split up from Generation X, his the bass player in his band, Tony James, formed Zig Zig Sputnik, who were actually influenced by the Cassandra Complex. And the first gig they did, we were the support band at Abbey Road of all places. So, and I'm pretty freaking sure Billy Idol knew about this album before he did his album. So, rip off much. But anyway, I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter.
Well, what's amazing is
made a better record.
When that album came out, that was like the laughing stock of cyber culture, and Mondo 2000 declared that was the jump the shark moment.
It was. Yeah, it was instead of being the album that kickstarted cyberpunk to the mainstream, it was the album that killed it of any credibility whatsoever. But it was really cool. I wrote an essay, and one thing I wanted to plug here is I've been doing a history of cyberpunk series on Adafruit, which is a DIY tech parts company that spun off from Make, folks that were associated with Make. It's adafruit.com. If you go to the blog and search on Cyberpunk, I've been doing a history of Cyberpunk series 3 posts a week.
And in that, I tell the story of Billy Idol and how we came to, what the story I just told you, but how then that ended up playing out with Mark Frauenfelder and I getting him on the well and having this really super negative reaction from everybody who thought it was some marketing ploy. And the truth of it was, he said, I want to get online. Where should I go? And we said, oh, we'll get on the well. That's where we are. So it's really as sort of innocent as that. But I think he deserves a lot of credit because he really realized early on the DIY, the potential to use these democratized technologies for artists to take control of the music, of the marketing, of the design, he did everything in his house with Mark Frauenfelder. He did the album covers, he'd home studio. And by home studio, I don't like a professional studio in the home. He's using all commercial PCs and stuff.
Right.
And he really saw, one of the things he said to me on the phone is, the internet is punk rock. And I just thought that was like,
damn straight. Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's such a sort of rock star posture statement. But over time, I realized, like, no, he saw that as a way of getting back to his punk rock roots and just DIY. You do it yourself. But the sad thing was, over time, his people, I would talk to him, but then I started talking to his people, and then he was answering his email, but then his people were. So over time, all the walls slowly came back, which was really sad to see, because I think that was a sort of a moment that he broke out of that fame jail for a while.
Right. No, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, that was definitely something that I felt, and when we were doing this album and stuff around us. I mean, it was very much the DIY punk ethic, but with computers and the internet. I mean, that was what the Cassandra Complex was always about for me. Absolutely, I give him respect, and I actually listened to that album again the other day, because I remember when it came out, I heard it and I hated it, but I listened to it the other day, and it's actually not as bad as not anywhere near as bad as I remembered it. Is actually not bad at all. It's a pretty decent record, and it's starting to get people are starting to look at it now and going, actually, that wasn't a bad record at all. I mean, it was pretty good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I did the same exact thing. I mean, I was involved in it, and when it came out, I listened to it like twice and never listened to it again. It did not interest me at all. But then years ago, I went back and started listening. I was like, wait, this is not bad. And then when you go on Amazon, it's like 4 out of 5 stars now. And so it's gone from being just roundly panned to people think, oh, actually, no, this is not a bad Billy Idol record.
Right. Well, let's give away some music then, shall we? Let's close some entries and pick a winner. Matthias Gonitz, you just won yourself a CD. I hope you like Warhammer 40K. Or at least game. Are you a gamer, Matthias?
Ambient music.
It's just great ambient music generally, but I can see it's definitely good anyway. But great for gaming. But yeah, it's just a great ambient album, which is stuff that I love. Matthias Gunn, says brilliant, and send you a heart. Okay, Matthias. We'll get that out to you. So contact me later. Just write to me, rodneyorpheus@gmail.com, and send your email or send your mailing address over. We'll send you the CD. All right. So let's have another roll of the dice of destiny, shall we?
Oh yeah.
Let's see what we get. 15. It's like, oh, well, this is really right up your alley. This is a perfect question for you. A useful tool. You're allowed one useful tool. Now, you're a big DIY guy. I will talk about Make Magazine, I think, after this. But what would be your one useful tool?
I think on a desert island.
Well, let's assume it's like a desert island with a lot of modern conveniences.
Right.
Lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's sort of precious to say this, but because for me, miniature painting really is my therapy, my escape, Winsor Newton #1 sable brush, which I treat like a fucking samurai sword. So yeah, that my brush. I recently got down to the one brush method where you don't use all the little tiny brushes and you just use one brush, and if you know what you're doing, you can use that one brush to do everything for painting a tiny little eyeball to, painting the base coating a miniature. So yeah, that might be a silly thing, but if we're not really trying to survive, if we're going to, if it was for survival, it might be something like a Leatherman tool, like a multi-tool that could do everything from, cutting things, screwing things, whatever.
Yeah, Leatherman is great. I've got a Swiss Army Cyber knife. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Swiss Army Cyber tool. That's
Cyber tool. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. But yeah, I can dig that. But yeah, the paintbrush, that's got to be right up there as one of the most nerdy choices anyone's ever made.
But yeah, if I was on a desert island and couldn't paint, I would just completely go stir crazy. So.
And well, Brian Freisinger, who was our first guest, is actually on the chat right now, and he said, "I love doing that. Painting miniatures, very relaxing." So, So Brian, you can paint. You can paint some for me sometime.
Seriously, for folks that have ever been attracted to it or tried it, and and wanted to do it, but if you can get over that hump. For me right now, because one thing you can't do while you're painting is look at your fucking phone. You can't stop. Well, I mean, you can, but I put mine away. I'm not on the internet. I'm not on my phone. I just go down a rabbit hole for an hour or 2 hours, and I'm in this tiny little miniature world, and it's so soothing, and it's inspiring, and it's creative, and it's I just can't recommend it enough as nerd therapy.
Someday, maybe when I get really old, maybe I'll. I'll finally get to paint my Dark Eldar army. I'm a Dark Eldar.
Oh yeah, my son played Dark Eldar. I was Eldar, so we were sort of the house divided.
Eldar are pretty cool too, but I Harlequins. That's what I'm about. I'm about the Harlequins.
Harlequin army too.
Yeah. All right. Let's give away another book. So we've got a second copy of Tears in the Rain, and let's get that going. Okay, so where are we? Tears in the Rain 2, start the giveaway. All right, and there's Tears in the Rain 2, let's start it up. So if you didn't win the book the first time and would like a copy of Tears in the Rain, get into that raffle. X Studios is already in there. A.S. Johnson's already in there. Okay, so people are really keen on the book. So speaking of, we were talking about Make magazine. So tell us more about Make and the Maker movement, because I think that's really something utterly fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Make, to me, the Maker movement really did grow out of the stuff that we've been talking about, the Whole Earth catalog and that sort of California sensibility, punk, DIY, all of that sort of came together. I think a lot of it had to do with the tech wreck around the turn of the century, where all of these high-tech folks were suddenly out of work and they wanted to economize, and so they started working on their own stuff and repairing their own computers and all of that. And then Dale Doherty from O'Reilly Publications, O'Reilly does all the computer programming books. In his brilliance, he realized that there were all these disparate types of making. You got the craft folks, you've got your woodworkers, your computer folks, robot builders. And he said, he thought of this idea of creating sort of an overarching identity for those makers, where everyone who does hands-on stuff, and just like the painting thing I was talking about, the joy that you get from doing something with your hands. Let's create a magazine that celebrates that. So that was the beginnings of Make. Mark Fraunfelder, again, of Boing Boing. Mark and I have been at, Boing Boing, Wired, Mondo 2000, the industry standard. We've just followed. There's a small group of Richard Cadre's pretty much written for, who's now a well-known urban fantasy and was a cyberpunk author. We've all sort of traveled around together. And so Make magazine was started in 2005, I think, and just at the right moment, again, because I think of what was happening in culture and tech culture and the economy and stuff at that time, it took off. We started having these things called maker fairs, which are now international. There's like 100 and some happening this year. There's really huge ones in big cities, like we did them in San Francisco and New York for years, and now there's ones happening in Paris and Tokyo and all kinds of places all over the world. And it's basically a cross between sort of a science fair, an inventors fair, Burning Man minus the sex and nudity and drugs. And yeah, they're amazing places to go. If you ever get an opportunity to go to a maker fair, if you haven't.
I have not. I've never had the chance, but it's totally fascinating.
Yeah, there's a couple in the UK. And now there's there's spin-off things that aren't associated with Make anymore. Like there's one called Maker Central, which happens in the UK. I'm not exactly sure where, but that's one that seems to be really taking off.
Yeah, well, nowhere at the moment because we're still in lockdown. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's no fairs right now.
But I mean, that's what I find interesting because in the situation we're in now, the whole maker culture becomes even more useful and interesting because you can make stuff at home while you're stuck at home.
Well, yeah, no, I was actually just about to make that point where for a long time it was people like with 3D printing, which grew out of the maker movement, commercial 3D printing. And for a lot of the time, people were going like, yeah, but you're just making plastic junk. You're not really making anything useful. Like, what can you do with this that's useful? And there were some applications, but now we're finding out with the pandemic that hospitals are having, like makers are turning their little 3D printers into printing farms, and they're printing out face shields and masks and components for ventilators. And so, yeah, if you go to makezine.com right now, the whole site has basically been taken over by these efforts to do things to address the pandemic. And makers have always had this attitude, which Make magazine very much cultivated, of sharing what you know and doing and open sourcing things as much as possible and all of that. And I think all of that stuff has now come together in something that's really, there are a few hopeful and good things that are coming out of this, but seeing how the maker community is really rising to the occasion and doing, useful and life-saving things is one of those for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. All right, so let's see who we've got. Had Jones 93, you've just won yourself a copy of Gareth's book. Excellent Borg like me. Oh, and Troy's chat asks, did Cory Doctorow steal his book title from you? What book title would that be?
Oh, Makers. Well, yeah.
Oh, of course, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Makers is about makers, and so you can't really copyright.
Yeah, exactly. Steele is kind of he may have been inspired by it. Let's put it that way. Let's be nice about it.
It's very much inspired, but it basically is a book that's inspired by the maker movement and the whole concept of makers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love Cory's work. I mean, he was part of that whole scene as well, right? And still is. I mean, very much so.
Very much so. Yeah, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom was, part of that sort of second or is that third wave cyberpunk. I can never keep up, but yeah.
Yeah, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom was the first one of his I read, and it's a brilliant book. If you haven't read that, folks, Cory Doctorow. Well, one of the great things about Cory's books is he makes them all available online. So if you haven't discovered Cory Doctorow yet, I think his website is craphound.com.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
CRAPHOUND, craphound.com. And if you go there, you can download all of the Cory Doctorow books for free, which is and they're brilliant.
It's so amazing. He's made, I think, real money selling his books when he's also giving all of them away for free, and he always has.
Well, the beautiful thing that I love with Cory Doctorow, and this is one of the things I give him huge respect for, he says, download the book for free, and if you like it, go and buy it and give it to your local library. Or contact your local school and see if they've got a program, and then buy his books and give them to the library. If you want to give him money, do it that way, which I think is just amazing. Yeah, you can read the book for free, and if you want to support him, just buy his book and give it so kids get to read it, and that's just incredible. And his young adult novels that he's written recently are tremendous. Really, some of the best young adult novels.
Yep.
Devilfoy says, I need to know, that's Brian Freisinger, by the way. I need to know more about the wicked-looking cane over his left shoulder. Left shoulder?
Oh, that's that's part of my
his right shoulder.
I can't reach it, but...
spinal issues.
But That was part of my Halloween costume. I went this. I do a big Halloween party at my house every year, which has a theme, always has a theme. And this year it was Utopia or Oblivion from the Buckminster Fuller, going all the way back to the Whole Earth catalog again, was a Buckminster Fuller quote, or a book title, I think. But and so I went as an ash waste shaman, like a techno shaman. And my partner Angela went as the Garden of Eden. So she went Utopia, I went Dystopia, and then at one point she said something like, "Okay, you won," kind of thing. Like, you know, I was ahead of my time, and because yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't know that we were about to head into a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, who did? Well, CDC did. I mean, if you were actually following what the CDC have been saying for the last 10 years, we're going to have a pandemic.
Oh yeah, well yeah, and the coming plague, that book, The Coming Plague, and Bill Gates in 2015. Yeah, it's been everyone's known for a while, but
but nobody wanted to care, and here we are.
Nope.
Any road, we've actually been talking for like well over an hour now, nearly an hour and a quarter. It's just flown by. Anything else you want to talk about that we haven't touched on yet? Anything you want to plug?
Well, yeah, just as that Adafruit series. I also, if you're into maker stuff, I do a DIY tips newsletter every week that I put out through the Cool Tools Network.
Okay.
Which is Kevin Kelly, who is associated with the Whole Earth catalog.
So how do people get hold of that?
Well, the easiest thing to do is just go. My Twitter handle is Gareth B2, the numeral 2. I put up everything through there. So I put up the Adafruit things when they come out. I put up my newsletter when it comes out, new projects I'm working on. I also blog daily for Boing Boing. And so all my Boing Boing blog posts go up there.
It's at Gareth at Gareth B2.
Gareth B2 at Twitter.
So you're the clone of Gareth. The clone of Gareth B2. I'm thinking the paranoia where everyone's got clones, you know, like you start with a character Gareth B1, then you've Gareth B2. It's such a violent role-playing game. You have 6 clones, and I've seen people go through the first 3 before even the initial briefing is over. Well, before we wind up, we've got one more giveaway to do, and this is a video game. We've got a Steam key for the video game The Witness, which I think was kind of appropriate because you've been witnessing all of this stuff and communicating it from the beginning. So we got a Steam key for The Witness. It's a 10 out of 10, hugely highly rated game. If you would like to get The Witness on Steam, let's start that giveaway. Remember, you have to be a follower. If you're a follower on Twitch, you can enter. If you're a subscriber on Twitch, you can get an extra entry. So please do subscribe if you can. Let's start the giveaway. Oh, and thank you for following Gratz11. So yeah, the raffle starts. Steam key for award-winning video The Witness. So just type in !raffle if you'd like to enter that. Whoa, what else? Let's do another Desert Island. Let's do another Desert Island question while people are entering. And it's a number 4. What's that? Okay, here's one. A movie. Are you a movie fan?
Oh God, yes, of course. Yeah, and I again, I always try to think of what could I watch forever and be happy and still feel like I'm getting information from it. And for me, that'd be 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yeah, because I do watch that every couple of years, and I always get something out of it. So I think that's, to me, you know, Cocteau had this idea of liquid poetry. That's what he called movies. He thought movies were gonna like change consciousness and access that sort of surrealist dream states and things. But he called movies liquid poetry. And if you look at his early things, like Blood of a Poet, his early films, that's pretty much how he related to it, which pretty much is just music videos before music videos.
True.
Blood of a Poet's pretty much MTV, you know, 19, whatever that was. But yeah, so to me, 2001 is just pure liquid poetry for me. So that would be my pick.
I could totally see that about you. What would mine be? God. Shit. Honestly, I don't really know. The first one that comes to mind is also a science fiction movie from the same period. One that very few people know. It's called Silent Running. You ever seen that movie?
Oh God! Oh,
With
dude,
Bruce
yeah.
Dern.
No, I can switch. I could easily switch to that movie. That movie just astonished me as a child, and I saw it as a young
I saw it
person.
as a child, yeah.
Oh my God! Yes. And that was the special effects guy from 2001 who used a
That's
bunch
right,
of the
yeah.
models and leftover stuff
Right.
from 2001 to do that film, Dykstra.
Yep. And it's such a beautiful, and it's got one person. It's only got one guy in it, Bruce Dern, who is like a brilliant and underrated actor.
Yeah.
And it's just him and 3 robots on a spaceship trying to save the last planet, the last forests on Earth. He has a spaceship full of forests.
In geodesic domes.
And in geodesic domes. I mean, it was like, and it's just his adventures with his robots in a forest in space. Absolutely beautiful, heart-rending movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that movie because, like, there's a bit where one of the robots, he kills one of the robots accidentally, and he can't repair it, and the other robots are getting sad. I sobbed like a baby every time.
I bawled my brains out the first time I saw that as a kid. Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Huey, Dewey, and Louie, the 3 robots. Yeah, it's such a great movie. Such a great movie. And I love that because to me, it was hard SF, but it was also about ecology, and it was about robots and cybernetic intelligence and bringing that all together, and that emotion within roboticism and so on. So I think I watched that, and it just like tied up so many things in my brain that...
Same. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, to me, those are very much related films because it's a bunch of the same people. It's got very much the same sort of poetic pacing, and it's very it's got a very gentle kind of vibe through it. But there's also very sad and ominous, and
yeah. Well, there we go. All right, so I think we're going to call it a halt there. That's been a long and fantastic... Well, the thing about these shows, they always seem to go by in a blink of an eye. It's like...
I know.
I always feel like I've been talking for 10 minutes, and I look at the clock, and I'm like, holy shit, we're well over the hour. All right, so let's see who's going to win the witness, and then we'll call it a night. So, by the way, if you haven't followed yet, like I say, if you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much for watching. I can't see you on Facebook, unfortunately. It's a one-way thing when I go out to Facebook, but I know lots of people are watching there. If you're watching on YouTube, again, thank you very much. If you're watching on Twitch, thank you to everyone who's contributed in the chat. That's been really, really good. If you please do follow, please do subscribe. If you've got an Amazon, if you don't have a Twitch Prime account yet, you do if you have Amazon Prime, because Twitch is owned by Amazon. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you can link it to Twitch to get a free Twitch Prime account. And if you do that, you get a free subscription to my channel. And if you do that, they pay me. So take the money away from Jeff Bezos and send it to me instead. He can afford, let's face it, he's not going to miss it. So yeah, please do subscribe to the channel. There's also a donation button on Twitch down below. You can hit the donation button if you want to send me a couple of bucks and help me keep my beautiful wife in the state that she likes to be kept in, which is that's not going to happen your donations are going to help.
Yeah, I think she probably gave up on that a while ago.
But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Let's close the entries and pick a winner for the game. And the winner is Hadjones93 wins again. Håkan, you're a very lucky man today. So you've won the Steam key. I will send that to you later. So all the winners, please send me an email to rodneyorpheus@gmail.com with your address, and we will send those things out to you. Next week, so this is the 4th episode of Desert Island Nerds. I do it usually every Sunday night. First for Saturdays, never Sundays. Next week, I'm not 100% sure yet. Well, we've had Brian Freisinger, who is a VFX artist. We've had Anthony Johnson, who's a comic book writer and novelist. We had Christina Z, who is also a writer, a comic book writer, and we've had the third writer, so 3 out of 4 has been a writer. So next week will not be a writer. I'm thinking it'll be a musician. It's definitely going. I've got a couple of very interesting musicians lined up, so we will see who that will be. Thank you so much, Gareth. It's been an absolute joy.
It's been a lot of fun. I hate to go.
All right then. Well, I'll see you on Facebook, and everybody, thank you so much, and good night.
Thanks, everybody. See you.